right, good evening, everybody. We've got Instagram and Facebook up and running, and it is about time to get started. My name's Adam White, and I am Government and Legislative Affairs for the Alaska Airmen's Association. And so we'll give folks a couple of seconds here to get everything situated. Seeing some activity over here on Instagram, waiting on Facebook to wake up. And I got two folks showing up there now, so that's good. A few more people popping up. So we're going to go ahead and, in the interest of time, go ahead and get started. There's a lot of things going on for me this evening. I don't know why everybody wants to schedule something on the same night, but we try to keep these things relatively short anyway, just for folks' attention spans. And just a reminder that these are archived on YouTube. So if you miss them as I do them live, you can go back and look at all of those on our YouTube channel. Just search Alaska Airmen, and you'll find our channel and be able to go through there and look at previous updates and be able to see this one most likely by tomorrow afternoon. So, so thanks for Will and all the folks there in the office in Anchorage for all of their support and help on that side of things. Speaking of the office in Anchorage, they have been incredibly busy, and that is a good thing. Ticket sales have started for the raffle plane, and I told you that there were some exciting things happening. I couldn't talk about it too much last month, but hopefully you've seen the news. We're doing a Carbon Cub FX3 for the raffle plane this year, and we're going to be sending some folks down to help build that airplane there at the Cub Crafters factory. And so it will be an experimental airplane with lots of really cool toys and add-ons and all that kind of stuff there. So be looking for more information and more updates about that. If you have not bought your ticket yet, no time like the present. Well, actually not right now, because the office is closed at this time when I'm doing this live. But call during normal business hours, and they'll be glad to set you up. There are a few kiosks located around the Anchorage area and other places, so you can hopefully find one of those, maybe even buy a ticket there. So let's go ahead and get started with some information that I need to bring to your attention. It is October. Summer season is over. If you can see, the airplane behind me is not a normal one that's here in the hangar. This is a friend of mine's, keeping it in here for him for just a little bit. And I have yet to take the floats off of the mall, and I think it's just, I don't want to give up on summer, but there's ice in the pond, and we've already had quite a bit of snow, and some of it's melted already, but winter is coming, summer is over. So with that, I always remind you that when you do your seasonal change, whether it's from floats to back to wheels, or if you're doing something different with your wheels or getting ready for skis, all that kind of stuff, this is the perfect time to go through and review your survival equipment you carry in the airplane. Now is the perfect time to go and make sure all your documents are in order. You know, the airworthiness, registration, operating instructions, and weight and balance. And I will tell you that I did that this week because I got a call from one of you asking about a registration certificate that had been lost. And I found out that I had lost a registration certificate for the 206. And so it is current, verified that on the website for the FAA. So I'm in the process of getting a replacement copy of the registration certificate. So trust me when I tell you, even though you think you've got everything all sorted out, go back and check. So this is a perfect time of year to do that. Change out your survival equipment depending on your terrain and your environment that you're flying in. Update some of that stuff. You know, the bag of beef jerky that you put in there a year ago, yeah, it may not be a good thing to keep in that survival kit, so replace that. Perfect time of year for that. Some other things I want to talk to you about. Of course, they are started their fourth special session for the Alaska legislatures down in Juneau, and there has not been hardly anything happening down there. I've been kind of keeping an eye on that because at the last special session, you remember I talked about there was a bill that was kind of pre-filed and talked about for a bit about raising fuel taxes for the highway, but that did not include aviation. Keeping an eye on that bill to see what happens. My guess is it won't be picked up until they go back into regular session after the first of the year, but I'll continue to watch that. Things in Washington, D.C. are crazy. The debt ceiling, you know, some of that's been passed. my understanding, I saw an update today. Another step of that process has been completed to roll that debt ceiling back until December. They have not fixed it permanently. The infrastructure bill is being held hostage as part of the negotiations back and forth between the right and the left. And who knows where it's going to wind up? Who knows how the infrastructure bill is going to end up in the end? How's it going to be funded? All these questions that we have, and hopefully those will be answered as we go along. So I'm following that pretty close, and actually have hopes that I'll be going to DC here before the end of the year. But we'll have to wait and see based on what COVID is doing and whether or not the folks there in DC are taking visitors and all the things that play into that. So anyway, usually I try to make a trip to DC once a year, but we'll see how that goes. So looking at my list, speaking of traveling, Canada announced that they are going to require COVID vaccinations if you travel on what they consider mass transit. It's commercial airlines, trains, buses. They are talking about requiring a COVID vaccination starting October 30th. Now, it's still a little bit unclear what does that mean for you traveling in your own personal aircraft. I haven't seen anything specifically about that, so my assumption is it's no different than you traveling in your personal vehicle over the road. But you need to check on that if you're going to be flying through Canada. It's a moving target when it comes to mandates for getting in and out of Canada when it comes to COVID, as well as other parts of the world for sure. So do your homework. Check up on that as you come and go if you're flying, excuse me, through Canada. Flying, navigating, segue into the next thing here. Non-directional beacons. What we use the ADF for, the automatic direction finder. If you have one of those in your aircraft, you will know that a lot of NDBs are no longer working in the state of Alaska, and the FAA is going through the low-hanging fruit of decommissioning non-directional beacons here in the state. Up to this point, they've been beacons that were not associated with airways. They weren't part of an instrument approach. They were just kind of orphaned, was the phrase that was used. Now the FAA is starting to look at some other potential candidates to decommission non-directional beacons. Here's what I need from you. I need you to let me know, how hard do we fight for this? How hard do we continue to fight for NDBs to be part of the national airspace system? I have advocated to keep a couple that have popped up, and the FAA has listened and they've reconsidered some of that. I did ask some questions about some that are on this current list that are, let's see, one of them was Hooper Bay, no, not Hooper Bay, Buckland, and then Anvik. And they have a DME associated with them, which is an unusual thing to have a DME associated with a NDB. Usually DMEs are associated with VORs. And so they were talking about possibly decommissioning the DME at those two locations with those NDBs. I know a lot of acronyms. Sorry about that. Hopefully you're able to follow along. So what I need to know from you is, do you want us to put a lot of time and effort to try to keep the non-directional beacons here in the state? Here's my personal opinion, and let me know what you think of this. The FAA is continuing to basically put all of our navigation eggs in one basket, and that's GPS. GPS is an incredible tool. I was flying in Alaska before GPS was very commonplace, and I remember when I saw the first handheld GPS in an airplane. Actually, I was flying from here in the interior to Bethel, and oh man, was it incredible to be able to fly with a GPS. Much better than a Loran even at that point. But VORs are going away in the lower 48 down to a minimum operational network. Alaska is not going to lose any VORs according to the FAA. We're still waiting on the Galena VOR to come back after it was wiped out in a flood. And our only other option has been NDBs. And now there's this move afoot within the FAA to phase out non-directional beacons. So I want to know what you use to navigate. I want to know if you fly IFR or VFR or mixed. Do you fly IFR sometimes? Do you have an ADF receiver in your airplane? How important is it to you that we fight to keep NDBs, or do we just let them slip quietly into the night? I need to know what your opinion is so we can advocate for you and what you would like to see done in that area. So let me know. My address, my phone number, and my email address is on the Alaska Airmen's website. You can find that at alaskaairmen.org, and send me an email or call me or text me. The number listed on there is my cell phone number. If you call the main office, they can forward that to my cell phone, and I'll be glad to talk to you there as well. So let's see. R2206, the Clear Air Force Station, and the new radar that's coming up, and the TFR that's surrounding that just at the north end of Windy Pass, just south of us here in the interior. There's going to be some changes to that TFR. The areas that have been turning on and off every day are going to start going to 24 hours a day as the Air Force and Missile Defense Agency continue to do the testing on that new radar site. And so they need to go outside of those windows overnight and into the day now to finish up that testing program. The areas that were only being turned on in the middle of the night on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, I believe it is, those will stay that way for the foreseeable future. My understanding, the last information I had, is that the FAA and Missile Defense and Space Force, now actually I shouldn't call it Air Force, it's Space Force, and that radar are trying to figure out when they're going to chart that revision for the restricted area, and then the TFRs would go away at that point, and the new restricted area would mimic what the TFR looks like today. Our best guess at this point, according to what I'm hearing from all the official sources, is it probably won't be until this time next year, maybe even December of next year, before we see that permanent charting. So we're going to be living with that temporary flight restriction for another year, most likely. Speaking of temporary flight restrictions, if you're flying out towards Gulkana, towards the Tok cutoff, and you fly over the old Harp Site, where they have all that radio transmitter equipment and big antennas out there in the fields, University of Alaska Fairbanks is now managing that facility, and they do some experiments out there with other institutes and colleges and universities and military and other things happening there. And there's presently a TFR up over that area. So again, check your weather, check your NOTAMs, check for TFRs, all of that stuff. Check to see what your charts are they current? I know a lot of folks are now going to digital charts on some of the apps on iPads and on your phone and all that, and so your maps are being updated with your subscription. But you need to look and see if anything's new and different. What you'll notice on some of the passes here in Alaska, the passes, some of them now have altitudes on them. The altitude of the pass. If you've flown in the lower 48, you would have seen that that's been there for a while. They used to be on a lot of the passes here in Alaska, and long story, they disappeared from the charts. And we've been able to advocate, along with the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. Tom George, the regional manager for Alaska there, has worked really hard to be able to get those altitudes put back on the charts. And so that's a big tool. You'll also notice some of the passes may be renamed or actually no longer called a pass. And so it's important that you look at your charts. Speaking of charts and looking at them, and now that we've gone digital, 15, 20 years ago, it was all paper, and you were putting your finger, you were tracing your route with your finger, and you were close. You were within a couple of miles of where you really were on the paper chart. Well, now with geo-referenced digital charts, it tells you exactly where your aircraft is. And so that's caused some problems because some of the boundaries, some of the features, some of the labels, some of the things that are on the digital charts are not exactly where they should be. And new things happen with every chart cycle that we find out another one was not in the right place. Most recently, some boundaries for some of the park trees are not exactly as accurate as they need to be now that we are digital geo-reference charts. So if you are going to land on a gravel bar thinking that you are on one side of a particular boundary of some kind, you may want to be careful. You want to give yourself a little bit more of a buffer to find out exactly where you are because the charts may not be accurate down to that detail. So be careful is what I'm saying. And if you notice an error, you remember there's a way that you can let the FAA know about charting errors. So you can look in the side column of the charts, and if it's a digital chart, hopefully you can touch that chart and it'll show the side data. There's a way there that it tells you how to submit errors for the chart to be reconsidered and redone. So, all right, so ramp checks. I saw that there was some activity on social media about an increase in the potential of ramp checks in the Anchorage area, and I'm just kind of curious to know if anybody saw that was the case. Let me know your stories behind that. Always kind of keep track of those and see how they go for you. Again, we talked earlier about making sure all your paperwork's in order. Probably a good thing to double check and make sure on that too. So if you've been ramp checked this summer or something, just let me know how it went. Let me know where you were and all those things. The FAA is trying to do their job, and part of their job is to do ramp checks. And ramp checks are very, very beneficial. I've been ramp checked numerous times, and it's always been a positive experience. Very conversational, back and forth with the inspector. A lot of good questions on their direction towards me. I had some questions going back to them, and a very positive experience for me personally. So if you've had a ramp check this summer, kind of curious to know your story about that and see how it went. All right, so that was pretty much all the updates. I just wanted to remind you that if you're interested in some research projects, there's some opportunities for you to help. Primarily, the biggest one is on Thursday. There is a Zoom call about how you can help with crowdsourcing and validating what a computer looks at with a weather camera image and estimating some more weather, ceilings specifically, and the cloud sourcing that happens with that. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, pretty sure we're going to send out another notification on our social media outlets about that event. But if you want to know more about that, reach out to me and I can give you all the details. Basically, it entails looking at a weather camera image and then agreeing or disagreeing or estimating what you think the visibility would be in ceilings. And I think this particular project is mainly looking at ceilings, but I may be mistaken on that. There's so many of these things going on right now that it's hard for me to keep track of them. Another one that's out there for you to look at is a cloud section tool that's using satellite information to be able to go in and estimate what not only the tops, but the bases and what the clouds are made out of. And there's a route tool now with that. So there's a free-form route tool where previously it had only been some pre-formatted routes. So if you want to know more information about that, reach out to me as well, and I will give you information about that one too. Let's see, graphical forecast for aviation. That tool is continuing to be further and further refined. You know that in the lower 48, area forecasts have gone away. The text area forecast has gone away in the lower 48. They're looking at possibly doing the same thing here in Alaska. But before that happens, we need to make sure that the graphical forecast is accurate enough. And so there's some ways that you can look at that as well. The Aviation Weather Center has got a test bed that they're going through and doing that on. So if you want more information about that project, let me know. I'll be able to fill you in on those. All right, so that's pretty much what I had on my list for us. Again, want to remind you that raffle tickets are on sale for the Carbon Cub FX3 that the Alaska Airmen's Association will be raffling off at the Great Alaska Aviation Gathering in May. So I did see a question that scrolled past pretty fast on Instagram, and I want to go back and try to address that. Question was, how often do we do these? So I do this every month on the first Tuesday of the month, starting at 6 o'clock Alaska time. And they are archived not only on Instagram and Facebook, but also on our YouTube channel. And that may be the easiest place for you to go back and watch all these is there on YouTube. So scrolling back through the conversation here, not seeing any other questions that have popped up. I'll try to keep talking here for just a second or two to make sure that if you do have a question, go ahead and type it in there in the comments, and I'll see it flash up on the screen, and I'll be able to address that for you. But once again, just the high points. I need to know some information from you. How important are non-directional beacons to you today? And how hard should we fight for advocating that a few of them stick around? Have you had a ramp check this summer, and how did it go? Kind of curious about that. Survival equipment, now is the time of year when we are between seasons to go through and unpack all of your survival gear, clean it up, make sure it all still works good, remind yourself how to use some of it. It's ironic that sometimes folks get into a survival situation and open up their kit and forget how to use some of the things that they've got in there. So keep up on that. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions pop up. I appreciate you joining me this month, and I look forward to talking to you again. Just a reminder that the transponder, our newspaper, is at the printers right now, actually, and so it should be getting into your mailbox here in the next week, and so be looking for that. There is a digital version of the transponder on our website now, so you can go look at it digitally, and there's some links that are for advertisers that you can click on, and it takes them straight to their website. So little interactive tools there for that. Don't forget to buy your raffle tickets. Supports a lot of the activities of the Alaska Airmen's Association. You've probably seen our ads popping up on social media about what the ticket sales fund for the association. A lot of scholarships are funded with that. A lot of our youth outreach is funded with that. Actually helping fund my position, doing government legislative affairs. Raffle funds help with that part of the budget as well. So a lot of other things that are going on with that. And it looks like Tim just got his transponder. So, hey, good for you, Tim. Mine should be in the mail here by the end of the week. So that's good. Good to hear that folks are actually getting those in their hands right now. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and say good night, and we'll talk to you next time.